Welcome back to the Extra Rep Podcast, guys. I'm Josh.
I'm Liam.
Today we're going to talk about how to train when you're stressed, tired, or time poor. So 3 really big challenges that a lot of people are facing today. So we're going to go through, obviously, in terms of training, how you should do things, what you should be swapping, if you're really tired, really stressed, should you be training at all? These are all things that we're going to look at to obviously get training to be as effective as possible when you're going through things like this, especially, like I said, stress, tired, time poor, etc. So I think the first thing to sort of cover, Liam, is that the training, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like, if, for example, if someone's training 5 sessions a week, and 1 week they need to cut it down to 4, it's not the end of the world. You're not going to lose your gains. Of course, you don't want it to be something that you do every single week, because then you're probably just going to need a change in program or structure and reduce the days, but it's probably not as scary as people will make it out to be. They think they're going to lose gains, and they really won't as much as you think.
It depends.
Of course.
It depends on their programming, depends on, their sleep, how much food they're eating, all that stuff. But for the majority, they don't really have much to worry about. But I will say, training is still very important. If you're time poor, if you're stressed, if you're not sleeping well, still get your training done or find a way.
And I think it just comes from the response that you get from training. All the positive responses you're going to get in terms of, retaining, building lean muscle, all those sort of things, insulin sensitivity, etc. Even when you're, tired, stressed, time poor, if you can still get in and do something, it's probably always going to be better than doing nothing, unless, you're chronically fatigued or something crazy like that. So I think going through maybe stress first, what would you say to someone who's, pretty chronically stressed at the moment in terms of like training and how they should structure their training around that?
Well, it depends on the type of chronic stress, right? Like if it's a physical chronic stress, that's going to be different to like an emotional chronic stress or a financial chronic stress. So structuring the training program, I don't think would change much around that, but it's just good to be mindful of which stress is going on there. I'd like to obviously start off with at least twice a week and making sure they have 1 to 2 working sets and not high reps, not junk volume, and making sure they can recover from it. Like, we always got to find the baseline of what they can recover from under the amount of stress that they're in. Until you see like 2 to 3 weeks of consistent numbers moving up, you're like, okay, you found the sweet spot there. So I'd say at least 2 times a week or 3 times a week.
Yeah. And I think, for some people who want to just think that, the more I train, the better it's going to be, I think that's something to actually think that if you're just thinking that, then you probably are getting more stressed, more tired, and more time for all those 3 things together. So it is something that if you can do more, or get the same response in less time, of course, people enjoy the gym. Some people just love getting in there for, mental health as well, right? But if you can get in for a shorter period of time, do the intense sets, get in, get out, and make progression, that's actually going to lead to a better response and less stress, less tired, and less time poor overall. So I think that's a really good thing for some people to think about. Are you doing 4, 5, 6, 7 sets of one exercise, or can you get the same response in 1 or 2 sets potentially?
Yeah.
And then when maybe you're a bit less stressed, maybe when you've got a bit more time, etc., then you can branch out, do that extra set, and you'll be able to actually recover and still progress from it.
I mean, we should always look at this psychologically as well. So psychologically, we can talk ourselves out of everything. I got a shit night's sleep, so I'm not going to go to the gym because I'm not going to perform. I'm too stressed with everything at the moment, so it means I'm not going to perform at the gym. It must be a waste of time. It's not the case.
Yeah.
At all.
For sure.
It's like training in the gym will help offset all those things. We're actually seeing studies now come out that, you can be sleep deprived, but you can still train and make gains. It can still work, and it can offset the negative impact that sleep has in terms of brain and cognitive function. Yeah,
for sure. I think going back to that, like even training like in an already sort of really stressed, chronically stressed state is something that is not going to be. Obviously, you need to sort of ramp yourself up for training, right? But like, for example, for me, in context, like if I'm really stressed between clients and then I've got like an hour I need to get in, or a coach was telling me, he's like, man, just like take 2 minutes, like do some just some warm up mobility stuff and just breathe.
Yeah.
For a lot of
Slow
people,
down.
it's literally just taking a few deep breaths, slowing things down, going through a couple of those things, focusing on taking a big breath into your belly, those sort of things, and just reduce things a bit, try and reduce all the distractions. Obviously using your phone to pop in your weights is fine, but if you're scrolling between social media, that's actually, and all the research has come out to say it really, really starts to affect people's cognitive performance, especially in the gym. So I can guarantee you, if you're scrolling 5 minutes between every set, you're not getting as much out of the gym in terms of your working sets as you could be, for sure.
And it's not just cognitive performance, it's actually recruiting the motor units for the muscle fibers under that mechanical tension. So you're actually recruiting, think of it this way, this will be a really simple way. While you're scrolling on your phone in between sets, you're going to be getting less gains per set.
Which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because you wouldn't think that, your phone has such an impact, but unfortunately it actually does. And like I said, you reply to a text or two here or there, like I said, it's not the end of the world, but like I said, if you're just doom scrolling between sets, and then that probably comes down to, not even going through a proper rest time, and then things go out of whack with the program. So it really is important that when you're in that for that, 30, 45, an hour, whatever it is, that you do that diligently, stick to your rest times, do things properly, and really make sure that you're, it's easier for people who've trained longer, but be in the zone, Don't be dilly-dallying when you're doing your set. Like, actually lock in, focus on every single rep, and make sure you're getting the most out of them, because the people that do that are going to see the best response.
Exactly.
Easy. I think next thing we want to talk about is, again, in terms of intensity, that's one thing where, again, people will talk too much about the junk volume, like, I'm supersetting this with that, I'm doing that for this. Supersets could be a great way potentially to get more done in less time, but we need to make sure that we actually still rest between supersets. We need to get that motor unit recruitment back. We need to recover between that. So sometimes doing, you've seen people do trisets, giant sets, one exercise after another, just annihilating things.
Yep.
And again, it can work for a short period of time, but eventually, like I said, that recovery hole, especially if you've got any, extra stress, haven't slept well, etc., can unfortunately put you down a rabbit hole. So if you are going to use supersets, awesome, can be really time beneficial. But what I would do is set it up so, let's say you're doing a bench press and a pull up, do your bench press, right? Maybe rest at least a minute and a half, 2 minutes, then do your pull up, then maybe rest another 2 minutes, go back to your bench.
See, that's a really interesting example of a superset, because everyone thinks of a superset of, all right, I just did the curls, quickly drop them, go straight to the tricep extension and rep it out. They don't get that 1.5 minute rest in between. The only time supersets are beneficial is when you get adequate rest in between and you're training, a muscle group that hasn't just been hit.
Yeah, and that's what, again, a lot of people will, and again, when you first start in the gym, it's probably fine to do that, right? Especially if you're doing like biceps into triceps, right? Like, you'll probably be okay with smaller muscle groups. Bigger muscle groups are going to take a lot longer. You might be able to get away with it, but as you start being more advanced, that motor unit recruitment really does start playing a lot more of a part, because you're just going to make really, really small fractional gains, and you need everything to be, basically spot on if you're going to progress. And unfortunately, rest time is going to be one of those things. The muscle does need to be fully recovered, or otherwise you're just not going to get that response.
Exactly. Like, I challenge anyone listening to this, do a barbell back squat in the racks and then jump up and do a set of weighted chin-ups or just chin-ups. You're going to be completely gassed.
Yeah. And I think that one good thing to mention is that sort of brings into your aerobic system as well, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where I've had clients where, we've gone from supersets to supersets and we've still rested in between, but they're still gassed, right?
Yeah.
So that leads me to believe, okay, there's an issue now here cardiovascularly. So that's when I'll give them, maybe the Stairmaster, maybe, heart rate between 120, 140 BPM, just going for half an hour on the treadmill or whatever their cardio of choice is, because that's actually going to help them in terms of actually recovering between sets, because we want to be prioritizing recovery between sets, because then we can push harder. And if we can do that in a shorter period of time, get the same done for less, that's going to be a big tick, obviously, in terms of that time poor as well.
100%. Recovery is everything. Like, if people are time poor, I'd honestly say, like, if you've only got 45 minutes in the gym, just pick like maybe 4 main exercises and just focus on getting one really good set. Take your time to warm up and then just get one really good and potentially 2 really good heavy working sets.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Especially if you're training like let's say twice a week, right? Like, it would be, yeah, if you're training twice a week, like would I do arms? Yeah, of course you can add them in, but it's like if you can do like an overhead push, a pull movement, any sort of push and pull movement, and then like a hinge and a leg press, leg extension, etc. Like 4 big compounds, they're probably going to be your best bang for buck. Sorry, your best bang for buck in terms of that. So it's just about making the most out of the least time you have. So if you've only got 2 days to train in a week, it'd be quite silly to be doing 5 exercises for your lateral delts, for example. Whereas if you've got those 4 or 5 days, you can start spreading that volume around a little bit more. But again, you have to be quite strategic with it as well. And like I said, that's where coaching and those things come into play, and actually having a good program and someone who actually knows you as well.
Exactly. I mean, think about old mate that commented on my TikTok the other day. I made a video about explaining specific volume and 2 working sets of 5 to 7 reps and all that stuff. And this random guy just commented completely out of context, "I don't have time to spend 2 hours in the gym." And I just kind of left it because I was like, well, it's got nothing to do with the video, so yeah, all right. But Josh ended up replying to him and just also mentioned like, hey, it had nothing to do with also the timing in the gym, and, gave him some advice and all that stuff. And then, he dug in a bit deeper and asked like what we do and stuff. And I said 2 working sets, 5 to 7. I'm in the gym for a max an hour training full body because he thought it would take 2 hours. And then he just came back and mentioned, I like to do 3 to 4 sets of like 12 reps, which for what reason?
Yeah, and that's, people just get married to, like, and again, it's, due to social media, due to things, this bodybuilder did this person did that. It's like when we go, like, the bent over row discussion, it's like, Arnold did bent over rows to grow a big back. And it's like, could they be useful? Of course they could be useful. Context dependent, volume, frequency. For me, just, between like leg days and back days, it probably puts too much strain through my lower back. So at the moment, I just do them chest supported because it's easier for me. I can target the tissue better, but that doesn't mean you can't do a bent over row, right? It's all down to program design. And you don't have to do certain exercises all the time. So I think that is something, there is going to be a variation for everyone, depending on injuries, depending on hypertrophy, depending on where you are in your training journey, beginner, intermediate, advanced. That will obviously suit you at the time, and then you can start making progressions or regressions based on where you are as well.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Arnold thing because a lot of guys have definitely gravitated towards his programming and listening to him talk about, don't be a baby, you make the time to work out, all this stuff. It's like, but then when he talks about his workouts back in the day, so 2 things for factor in here. 1, he was openly taking steroids. 2, he's got genetics. But the other things were he was training 5 hours a day in the gym, in Gold's Gym, that's all they did. And he was working construction all day as well. He wasn't a movie star yet. Should you really be following that?
Yeah. When you think about the amount of like he was superhuman basically, like even before the steroids, like he was just a superhuman freak. So I think, it's hard because, there are some people just genetically who are already freaks and then they take gear, and those are the people who win Mr. Olympia, right? But
from a volume standpoint, right? 5 hours in the gym a day. And he's like, I loved it. And he mentioned, he's like, I was tight, but so what? It's like...
And that's the thing. It's just pointing out that, like, yes, you can do that, but that doesn't mean you're going to get more out of it. And for the average person who doesn't have elite genetics and isn't taking steroids, unfortunately, you're just not going to be able to do that without your joints screaming at you, and then again, recovery goes down. Your stress from the training volume goes absolutely sky high. You're always tired. You can't sleep. And then, again, your life revolves around training. So unless you're a pro or looking to be a pro, it's just things you don't need. You can be a lot smarter about how you program around those things, and obviously still live, a normal enough life, if that's what you want to do as well.
Exactly. I mean, we can all become obsessive with this, definitely. And it's good to be obsessive about your health and all the little things, right? But you can save so much time, energy, and all that by just understanding certain principles of understanding actual programming, junk volume, what you actually need to do. And this one for a lot of people I'd see is actually think about your own body, what it responds to, what it reacts to, and what your goals are. If someone says on Instagram, you don't need to train biceps this way or this way, but you find if you train it that way and it grows for you, continue that way.
Yeah. It's the human body's very, very different, and different things Yeah, there will be principles, but like different things will sometimes work better for different people. So it's just, you've just got to find ways where, finding something that works for you. You obviously like the exercise, you find it works the target tissue well, you see results from it, and those are the three things that you really need at the end of the day. Of course, if you smash in volume and it's not growing, probably another issue. But most of the time, I find it comes down to excessive training volume and your technique with the target tissue. It's normally when you get to those last 5 reps, that's when whatever you're trying to target might be a chest. All of a sudden, you're not really using much of that, and it's all your front delt and tricep to get the weight up.
Because of fatigue as well.
Exactly.
Like the muscle breakdown and the muscle fatigue from the excessive junk volume and sets. It's like sometimes, the other muscles that are a bit more fresher, like as you mentioned, the front delts, because your chest has taken all the load, they will start to naturally come into play just to help you get the load up.
I think one thing that we probably haven't mentioned yet is in terms of what to do if like you really have come in like tired, stressed, time poor. So let's say you normally train an hour, right? And you've only got 40 minutes, for example, and you're tired and you're stressed. Probably the easiest thing you can do is simply just do less working sets, right? But the 1 or 2 working sets you do, say you're doing 3 or 4, right? Drop it to 1 or 2. Like when I've been, teetering on sickness, and I know I go, okay, today I'm going to do an extra warm up, and I'm going to drop back on the volume and just do 1 working set on everything instead of probably the 2 or 3 I would normally do, depending on the exercise and what my coach has set for me. Doing that is a really good way to be like, okay, I'm still going to get some effective volume and reps here without overreaching and going too far the other way. So sometimes it's about, maintenance, or just like, okay, can I still make some sort of progression with a lower amount of volume? Because if you can still do that, and that brings you back next week to still make gains, rather than you smashing yourself and then the next day it's like, oh, I'm sick, or now I can't train. I've gone backwards, I'm too stressed, the weight's not moving, and that's when that under recovery starts, and that puts you in that cycle where it starts becoming a lot harder to get out of as well.
I think people would be absolutely shocked on how much progress they can make on lower volume and how much better they'd feel and way more recovered between each session. Yeah. Like, honestly, like so many people think that doing more gets you more results. And when it comes to the gym, that's not always the case, unfortunately.
I think like one thing people probably mention as well is they go, oh, I'm tired today, so I'll just do like lighter reps. I'll go into higher volume. And unfortunately, the problem with that is
I just want to pump.
Yeah, I just want to pump. I'll just do a little pump and then, just keep the muscles moving. And I understand the theory, the logic behind that. But you'll find you would, again, get much better results, again, once you're sort of more an intermediate person. Just working up to one hard top set, getting that stimulus and then just dropping it from there and being like, there's no, no forced reps, no rest pauses, no supersetting back and forth with this and that. Just pick, for example, chest, you pick 2 exercises, work up, do a set or 2, and just make sure they're all good quality. You're feeling the target tissue rather than trying to smash yourself with 5 sets of 20 on chest flies because it feels good for your chest,
Well, it's worth mentioning because a lot of people would have that mindset of like, I'm just going to go in and do the lighter weights or get a pump and stuff to maintain the muscle because they know they're a bit fatigued and they just want to maintain the muscle. It's like, that is not going to maintain it. I hate to burst your bubble and spoiler alert, but just getting the pump does not correlate to muscle growth at all. The only way you can maintain your muscle is by giving it the same stimulus that it's previously hit before, not 50% of the weight.
Yeah, and that will happen again. You're going to have times, like I said, when you're tired, stressed, time poor, where, for example, you might be like, oh, I got 5 reps at 80 kilos on my bench last week, and this week I'm a bit more tired, a bit more stressed, but I matched the reps. And when you think about it, that's actually a massive win, right? It's like you're going to maintain the muscle tissue. You're not going to, push into that area of under recovering, doing too much. And you can be like, okay, focus on recovering, focus on good nutrition, good sleep, etc. Lessen the stress, and then you'll be able to come back next week, and you should be able to start, continuing to see progress there. So I think that's a good thing for people. Of course, you want to be progressing every single week, but when you're under these conditions, you've got to take the win of being like, okay, I've still matched last week's. I've still kept the muscle that's there. I've done the right thing. I've gotten the gym and still done what I can.
That's all you need, guys. Just 1 working set matching the week before. And even if you're out of time and all that stuff, and yes, you can't do your normal 4 sets or however many you do, if you just do 1 working hard set, then that will maintain the muscle. You won't lose any gains over that period of time because 1 week you had all these meetings and you were completely stressed and life went tits up.
Yeah. I think one thing I do want to mention last off is in terms of like, having like, I guess like a backup workout plan, or like say you go overseas, right? So I'm going to Bali next week. Luckily they have pretty well equipped gyms, right? So I probably won't need to swap things out, but there will be things that I might have to swap out, right? They might not have a certain piece of equipment that I normally use. And all you need to do is just find something that does similar, right? If you can't bench press, you can dumbbell press, you can use a machine chest press. You just need to find something that does roughly the same. Again, take an extra warm-up set because you're probably not used to that exercise, and then push it really close to, if not on failure. And you won't see too much difference. Of course, do you want to be changing exercise every week? No, but there are going to be times where you might have to do that depending on the gym you're at, depending on if you're overseas, traveling, training, etc. So I think that is one thing I want to leave you guys with, is that it's not the end of the world if that happens. Find something that does very similar, and you will be completely sweet, provided you are still pushing yourself where you need to be.
And especially if you're traveling, like there's already stress when it comes to traveling because there's so many things out of your control. If you just plan ahead and have things in your control, like for example, if you're traveling to a certain spot, and I do this with my clients, and we do it like, from nutrition standpoint, it's like, if you know where you're going to be staying, look at the options around you and look at the PDF menu, okay? But same goes for the gyms. And if not, then is there a hotel gym? Can you bring resistance bands with you in your luggage? Is there a playground around with you that has a chin-up bar and you can attach your band to it? Like, there's so many different options that you can go for. Just requires a little bit of critical thinking.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. And I think, again, at the end of the day, guys, like if you're going on holiday or things like that, like if you just did like one full body session across like the 2 weeks you're on holiday, you're going to do a pretty good job at probably maintaining all of your muscle, or very close to. So,
well, there's always that myth that people feel so much better on holiday and all that stuff. And, they're like, I didn't train, but I lost weight and all that stuff. It's like, you washed away so much fatigue that you had. Like, you were literally on the brink of collapse of like the amount of sets you were doing, and, stress from work and working and all that stuff like that. And then you go on holiday and take all that away, and then you get a lot better, and you're like, this is amazing.
Forced deload.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't even believe in deloads, to be honest. Like, I do think deloads are just coming from a place of not smart programming, or you have just under-recovered. It's as simple as that.
Chronic stress,
Chronic stress. Like, I gave the example on our last podcast of my gains over a 15-week period, and so many people would be like, wait, you progressively overloaded for 15 weeks straight? Why didn't you take a deload at week 6 or week 8 or anything? It's like, well, did I need to? No. I actually managed my maximal recoverable volume. I wasn't a dickhead. I didn't do excess junk volume, and I was still able to progress 15 weeks ahead. How many other people can have a program and progress for 15 weeks? Or at least some people from a boredom standpoint stick to the same exercise for 15 weeks. But if you understand these principles that we're trying to teach you guys, it's like, you don't need to take a deload. You won't feel like shit and stressed, and you won't actually have to, underperform when you go in the gym 1 week because life hit you. We had life hit us yesterday. We lost our poor dog Uzo, but Josh and I were still in the gym at like 7 a.m. this morning, and I don't know about you, but I still made gains.
Yep, still train well.
Still train well. I also had a banana and a coffee beforehand because, as we preach, you need your 20 grams of carbs and caffeine. But, shit happens in life.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the last thing. It leads you right in. Like, shit happens. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be tired. You're going to be time poor at times.
Yeah.
But if you can stick to the basics, be consistent, still get in, still get the gym, still create that routine despite everything that's going on around you, you're going to, number one, feel better. Number two, look better. And number three, you're going to be glad you did at the end of the day. So I think that's the main takeaway we want to get from this podcast. You can adapt things. You can change things. We want to make sure you just get something in to keep that muscle mass, if not be able to build it in those times. And then, of course, once that stress reduces, the time poor reduces, then you're able to, take it up to that next level. But again, comes down to smart programming, comes down to recovery, comes down to nutrition as well. I think that pretty much sums it up. So if you guys have any questions for us in regards to that, again, get us on Instagram, me at Action Fitness Nutrition, Liam at Coach Liam C. Murphy. But until next time, guys, we'll see you in the next podcast.
Thanks, guys.